Polish police kill a solidarity demonstrator in violent street battles in Krakow. But the union vows its voice will not be stilled. This is O28 News. Good evening. Australia's Foreign Minister begins efforts to get Moscow back to the arms negotiating table, but the prospects remain dim. Details soon on O28 News. Good evening. More US backing for the Gulf oil states.
American hostages still held in Lebanon as on-again, off-again release plans delay their trip to freedom. This is SBS World News. Good evening and welcome to our new viewers in Brisbane, Adelaide, the Gold Coast, Newcastle and Wollongong, joining for the first time our network audience in Melbourne, Sydney and Canberra.
A bloody end to a demonstration by peasant farmers in Manila. This is SBS World News. Good evening. Police and troops in Manila are tonight on full alert after a demonstration outside the presidential palace.
Anger over Victoria's building society crisis. And a homecoming turns violent in South Africa. This is SBS World News. Good evening. The Soviet Union has lifted its crippling economic blockade of Lithuania.
Growing world pressure for an end to the war that turns children into soldiers. The death of a giant of German politics. And the rising damages bill in South Australia's flooding.
All-out effort to complete key bridge for Bosnian NATO mission. Italian Prime Minister set to resign, and Yeltsin adamant on reform despite election woes.
Submarine drama, Russia turns to NATO for help. Supersonic setback, Britain grounds its fleet of Concords. Shootout in the West Bank as Middle East peace talks resume. And Clinton hands the baton to Gore. Good evening, I'm Indira Naidu. Time is fast running out for crewmen trapped on a Russian nuclear submarine.
Taking flight, Argentina's president flees the palace as crowds bay for his blood outside. British troops arrive in Afghanistan ahead of tomorrow's swearing-in of the new government. The Commonwealth takes a step towards expelling Zimbabwe. The Prime Minister comes to the defence of the Governor-General. And Moscow gives the Salvation Army their marching orders. Good evening, Anton Enos with SBS World News Tonight. The US military starts investigating claims of another massacre of Iraqi civilians by American troops. Corks popping after the snowy hydro sail is abandoned. Looting goes on in East Timor as the Prime Minister continues to resist calls for him to go. And growing anger in Chile over police tactics used to quell student protests. Good evening, Anton Enos with SBS World News Australia.
Political argument diverts debate on the national water crisis.
Sydney's traffic gridlock as main northern highways and rail routes are blocked by a bushfire.
Talking at last, but still no agreement between Palestinian leaders on a unity government.
And the mountain that Hillary Clinton has to climb to reach the White House.
Good evening and welcome to SBS World News Australia. I'm Mary Kostakidis.
And I'm Stan Grant.
A growing international chorus condemning Zimbabwe's president, but no tough action likely. Embattled Labour backbencher Belinda Neal steps aside from one parliamentary job while a new Iguana Gate claim is examined. A report shows we may be the world's fattest, but among the healthiest as well. And what's in a name? A lot if you're buying or selling fish, and today new standards have been introduced. Good evening, Nina Maratta with SBS World News Australia.
Flood levies hold, but Queensland towns are not out of the danger zone yet.
I am very confident that we will hold the water out of the majority of the town that's inside that levee bank.
Preferred Prime Minister Julia Gillard overtakes Tony Abbott in the polls, but still lags behind Kevin Rudd.
If we do that hard work, I believe we can win the election when it's held in 2013.
Dozens killed in Syrian shelling amid anger over UN veto.
From SBS, this is World News Australia.
Good evening and welcome to SBS World News Australia. I'm Anton Enos.
And I'm Janice Peterson.
Also tonight, the growing menace of politically motivated internet hacking. We examine a unique medical defence in high-profile hacking cases.
And we have highlights as Madonna wows the crowd at the world's most watched halftime show, the Super Bowl.
Authorities believe the Queensland town of St George will be spared a catastrophic flood.
Saudi executions. Anger as a top Shiite cleric is among 47 killed.
What do we want? Justice! What do we want? No!
A despicable crime. Israel's Prime Minister condemns the shooting in a Tel Aviv bar. And Donald Trump hits back after militants exploit him for a recruiting drive.
Hillary Clinton created ISIS with Obama.
This is SBS World News with Lee Lin Chin.
Good evening. Saudi Arabia's execution of a prominent Shiite cleric.
Mass protests in the Middle East as France's president warns Israel's Prime Minister of a danger to peace. Australia-linked Nobel Peace Prize winners warn the world is just a tantrum away from nuclear disaster. And more pressure mounts on Senator Sam Dastyari to resign over China links.
This is SBS World News with Janice Peterson.
Israel's Prime Minister says Palestinians must get to grips with the reality that Jerusalem is Israel's capital.